I did.
Did you observe gunshot wounds on her body?
I did.
Photograph those?
Yes, sir.
And at that point in time, did you know how many times she had been shot?
Not at that time. The only thing that I was sure of is that there were multiple gunshot wounds.
Since that time, have you learned an exact number of times she was shot?
Yes, sir.
And do you know just what number is that?
I think the ME's office said 8.
8?
Yes, sir.
Okay. After you, I may be getting your sequence of events out of order here, but you said you spoke to deputies on scene. Did you speak to other individuals around that location?
Yes, sir. When I got there, they kind of gave me a brief. That's when I found out that Miss Puckett was in the ambulance. One of the deputies had explained, normally in these types of investigations, we do a neighborhood canvass. They had told me that there were some neighbors that maybe had seen something, so I went and interviewed the neighbor.
After you interviewed the neighbors, were you also made aware of an incident that had occurred a few days later, or prior, rather, on the 19th? So
prior to going in and interviewing the neighbor, one of the names that came forward was a suspect's name came forward that explained that Miss Puckett had an ex-boyfriend named James Kahn that had showed up at her residence. I can't remember if they told me the date. I since know what date it is, but they had told me it had been a few days earlier, and Robertson County had been called because he had been there.
Is it fair to say at that point was he your primary suspect?
Yes, sir.
And with the fire out, did you search the home?
I did.
You could just generally describe the condition of the home whenever you searched it.
So I entered through the front door with with some fire investigators and another TBI agent that was taking photographs. The front door was kind of gone and been broken open. The front window that was broken open. I understand later that they had put water from the fire hose in there. You walk in to like the living area, and it was dark, so I had a flashlight. I immediately noticed it was a large, what I would describe as a crater in the center of the house. I was being told that Miss Puckett was discovered in her room, so I had to get a ladder. We had to kind of go down into the hole, but I got a ladder to cross over into where her room was, and then viewed that part of the scene.
But just to clear that up, did you lay the ladder over the hole so you had a walkway?
We did. We did.
And once you got into her bedroom, just describe generally speaking how it was situated.
So she had already been removed, but what I immediately noticed was there were some blankets draped through the window. The window in the bedroom had been broken, and I since learned that's where they had actually extricated Miss Puckett. And then I look on the floor. Right as you walk into the room, you can see pretty clear there are ignitable liquid containers. I saw her cell phone, or what I believe to be her cell phone, an Apple Watch, and some garments that had what I believed perhaps were blood. They had reddish-brown stains on them.
And did you photograph some of those items and take them into evidence?
Another agent photographed them, and I did collect those items.
I can hand you forward 2 separate pieces of paper. Defense counsel has them. Do you recognize that top photograph? You could just describe what's depicted there.
Yes, sir. In this photograph, crime scene markers 1, 2, and 3. There's a cell phone, a red cap with the tiki fuel, and the number 2 is the Apple Watch.
And likewise on the second sheet of paper, do you recognize if you could describe what's depicted there?
The second photograph is crime scene marker number 4, and that is a large white container. It's lighter fluid.
State would not move those as exhibit collective 3.
No objection, no. Mark with collective 3.
What did you, that evening, once you collected those items, the 2 ignitable liquid containers, what, if anything, did you do with those?
So I collected those items, I packaged them. Supervisor contacted Our forensic science department, because it's 11 p.m., and asked if they could bring somebody in. And then my boss said, well, if I bring somebody in, can you get that evidence to the lab? And that's what I did.
Once it was submitted to the lab, did you wait for the results?
I did.
And what, if anything, was relayed to you about the results of the fingerprint analysis?
I think it was back there for a couple of hours, and then the forensic scientist called me and said, I have 2 latent prints that are matched to James Conn.
Once you had that match, did you then obtain an arrest warrant?
I did.
If I could have him handed the arrest warrant, did you confirm his date of birth and social security number?
Yes, sir.
If I could have you look at that on the warrant. If you could just read what his, starting with date of birth is
8/29/1994.
and social security number.
408778217.
That, you can hand that back. Once you had secured the arrest warrant, was Mr. Conn apprehended?
Yes, sir.
And where was he apprehended?
In Smyrna.
Once he was taken into custody, did you continue your investigation?
We did.
Did part of that investigation include interviewing the defendant?
Yes, sir.
Approximately how long did you interview Mr. Conn?
Approximately 3.5 hours.
And not read his Miranda rights, all the things before you started speaking with him?
Yes, sir. He signed a TBI, Miranda waiver form.
And fair to say that you became familiar with his physical features?
I did.
Were you, during the course of your investigation, able to trace the items that you handed in to be fingerprinted, ascertain possible location where they were purchased?
We did.
And where was that?
In Walmart.
And just generally, how did you come to that conclusion? I
Well,
know you're working this with another agent.
During that interview with Mr. Conn, he had described a couple of businesses he had been to, talked about an Academy Sports, talked about going to Walmart, talked about going to Dollar General. So after that, the next day, we were trying to locate where these 2 items were purchased. We went to a couple of stores. I went to Tractor Supply. My partner went to Walmart, among other stores. He called me and said, hey, these 2 items are sold at Walmart. We have a...
Stop you right there. You mean the same branded items? Is that what you mean?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Continue. I'm sorry.
We contacted the regional loss prevention person for Walmart, requested, hey, we're looking for these 2 items sold on the same receipt. Is there anything that you can find? And that's what led us to that.
And were you able to obtain some video footage of that purchase?
We did, yes, sir.
Did you bring a still shot of some of that footage with you to that? Or are you familiar with that?
Yes, sir, I am.
What's also on the bottom of that?
On the bottom of this sheet that I just got handed is the actual receipt from that purchase where the lighter fluid and the tiki fuel is bought.
And is that a fair representation of at least that moment from the video footage?
That is the still that I saw.
Stephen, it doesn't do before.
No, Judge. You want the state's floor?
I know that just got handed up to the judge, but you're familiar with that particular photograph?
I am.
And being that you had spent several hours with Mr. Conn, are you able to identify who's depicted in that photograph?
I am.
And who is that?
That is James Jackson Conn.
Is he seated to the right of Mr. Thorne?
He is. He's dressed in red.
Now,
Reflect these, identify the defendant that's in the photograph.
fair to say that after that, you had that piece of evidence, did you still continue to investigate?
Yes, sir.
Did a portion of your investigation turn toward a Dollar General store here in town?
It did.
Could he be shown Exhibit 1 just to familiarize himself with
Yes.
this?
If you would turn that so he can see that.
has previously been admitted as our Exhibit 1. Are you able to, just viewing it, determine what the two stars represent? The one on top, starting with that,
Yes, so the one on top is Miss Puckett's residence.
and then the star that's on the bottom right here.
That would be the Dollar General next to the credit union.
Do you know, during the course of your investigation, have y'all tracked the distance between those two locations?
We have.
And approximately, what is it?
It's 1.2, 1.25 miles.
Did you obtain some footage from that location?
We did.
I took in note. Starting with the top, I believe it has 4 separate still shots. Are you familiar with those still shots from the video footage?
I am.
This is a fair and accurate representation of the Dollar General's surveillance on what date and time, roughly?
On January 22nd, 2022, roughly at 7:29, 7:30 p.m., this is the video that I saw.
State would move that as Exhibit 5.
State's fine.
Keep the law in there.
You can move the March one of that.
The Exhibit 5 that just got handed to His Honor, if you could, do you remember what's depicted in there specifically? Not the one that's at your podium right now, but the other one.
That is a photo of the car that's consistent with what Mr. Khan drives, and then it's a still shot of the video of Mr. Khan going inside the Dollar General.
And you've seen a larger portion of this video, but even from what we have as Exhibit 5, are you able to tell what Mr. Khan is wearing during his interaction at Dollar General?
It looks like he's wearing, I think he's got a beanie on, he's got some boots, he's got a Carhartt-like jacket on.
And you have another document there in front of you. Is that also some still shots from video surveillance at Dollar General?
It is.
And is it a fair and accurate representation of the date and time that you viewed that footage?
Yes, sir. The date and time of this video is January 23rd, 2022.
State would move as Exhibit 6.
Objection.
Noted.
Exhibit 6.
So what's depicted in those photographs from the stills from video?
Those photographs are, like I said, on the 23rd of January around 11:40 a.m. That's a photograph of, it appears to be Mr. Khan going to the Dollar General, going inside.
Roughly, do you know the time difference between the 22nd to the 23rd footage?
Roughly 16 hours.
And it's, I believe you said a vehicle consistent with that. Does that vehicle remain there from the 22nd into the 23rd?
That vehicle, when it shows up on the 22nd of January around 7:30, it does not move until that person at 11:40 goes in, makes a purchase, and then gets in it and drives away.
The difference, too, between Mr. Khan's apparel on the 22nd portion, what's different between the 22nd and 23rd when he returns to that Dollar General?
He's not wearing a jacket, that Carhartt-like jacket. He's not wearing that, and he's wearing red shoes.
What kind of footwear did he appear to be wearing in the first series of photos and videos?
From the Saturday night, January 22nd, they appear to be boots, brown boots.
So, having looked through the scene, collected on the other items than the ones we've shown, was a Carhartt-like jacket material found in the leftover from the fire debris?
Through the sifting, there was a Carhartt jacket that had been burned. You can actually see Carhartt on the zipper.
Are you able to tell, or is it in such a condition, is it the same color as the one that appears to be in the video from the 22nd?
It's grossly disfigured. It's burned pretty badly and a lot of smoke damage.
Now, the boots that are different from the shoes, have you located those?
Yes, sir.
Where were they located?
The shoes were recovered from a search warrant on Mr. Khan's house in Smyrna, and the boots were recovered from a search warrant from his vehicle. They were inside the vehicle.
Have those items been submitted for further testing as well?
Yes, sir.
Now, I think the fire investigators already testified to this, but just to be clear, was Deputy Puckett's duty weapon recovered?
Deputy Puckett's duty weapon was recovered in the fire pit.
And did you become aware that Deputy Ketchum had perhaps given her another firearm for protection?
We did.
Has that firearm been located to this point in time?
Not at this point in time.
No more questions, Your Honor.
Roll. Yes, Your Honor.
Agent Scarborough, my name is Greg Thorne. I'm here representing Mr. Khan today. Just want to follow up with you on some things here, making sure I understand time frames if we've got a few other questions. Let's start sort of with where you just ended your last comments. You talked about the video from Dollar General the night of the 22nd, and the individual you believe to be Mr. Khan wearing Carhartt type jacket and boots, correct?
Yes, sir.
I'm just wanting to make sure those boots, or some boots that you believe maybe were the same boots, were ultimately found inside the vehicle that was seized by search warrant in Smyrna.
That's correct.
That's correct. In the video from late morning of the 23rd, did you ever see any boots at that point in time on the individual who you believe to be Mr. Khan?
Did not. No, sir.
Okay. You said that he was wearing red tennis shoes at that time, correct?
It appeared to be. Yes, sir.
But you didn't see anyone carrying any boots or anything like that?
No, sir.
You mentioned that the vehicle that you believe to be Mr. Khan's was in the Dollar General parking lot from that night of the 22nd around 7:30 p.m. until the morning of the 23rd around 11:40 a.m., correct?
Yes, sir.
And you said that a purchase was made that morning at that Dollar General. Do you know what that purchase was?
Yes, sir.
What was it?
Bought a Red Bull and some cigarettes.
A Red Bull and some cigarettes. The night prior, was any purchase made that night at Dollar General?
Yes, sir, there was.
What purchase was made that night?
Hot Hands.
Hot Hands. Are those the little warmers on cold nights that you put in the pocket to keep your hands warm? Is that what you're referring to?
Yes, sir.
No other purchases were made either that night or that morning that you know of at that Dollar General?
Not that I'm aware of, no, sir.
The Walmart video that we've had photos passed up from, that was the Walmart in Smyrna, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Around what time, and my apologies, around what time was that video from?
I believe it's around 2:40 p.m.
That would have been 2:40 p.m. on the 23rd?
on Sunday, yes, sir.
On the Sunday, the 23rd, okay. So your time frame then from just these photos and videos would have been the night of the 22nd, this car arrives at the Dollar General here on the map. It stays there until the late morning of the 23rd. Purchases are made both times by someone you believe might be as Mr. Khan, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and then a few hours later, there's a purchase made at Walmart, correct?
That's correct.
The purchases at Walmart had the two items that you were looking for. That was lighter fluid and tiki torch fuel, is that correct?
That's correct.
Any other purchases at Walmart at that time by men you believe to be Mr. Khan?
On that receipt were those two items.
On the video, did you notice any other items being carried or anything like that?
I did not.
You've mentioned being able to identify the remains of a Carhartt jacket in the fire, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
But you said that it was severely, I forget the word that you used, but essentially it's been severely disformed and disfigured through the fire, correct?
It was burned pretty badly, yes, sir.
Okay. So any ability to identify that, what type of jacket that was other than a Carhartt jacket?
I'm somewhat familiar with Carhartt. It looked like the material of a Carhartt jacket, and then you can actually look at the zipper, and what we recovered from that fire area, it said Carhartt on the zipper.
Okay. But to be able to identify what specific style of jacket, not been able to do that so far?
Not thus far. There were several pieces of it.
Okay. Anything that would indicate whether it may have been a men's or women's jacket?
I'm not aware.
Okay. If we step back, you said that at this time you're now aware of 8 gunshot wounds in his pocket, correct?
Yes, sir.
Can you describe to me where those gunshot wounds were on her body?
When I photographed Miss Puckett that evening, what stood out to me was a gunshot wound to the right side of her face.
Okay. Other gunshot wounds to the face or to the body?
She had gunshot wounds to, from what I could tell that evening, to her chest. There were some, I think, in both arms, and she had a wound on her finger.
A wound on her finger believed to be from a gunshot as well?
It appeared so, yes, sir.
You said that that night, or that in your investigation, you were able to locate Ms. Puckett's service weapon, correct?
No, sir. You
did not locate her service weapon?
No, sir, not that night.
Okay, but during your investigation, it has been located?
That's correct.
Okay. Does it appear that that weapon had been fired, or are you even able to tell if that weapon had been fired prior to this fire?
The only thing that I am certain of is it was in a fire.
Okay. And we've heard testimony that there was ammunition going off when the firefighters entered this home. Is that consistent with what you've observed with that weapon? That perhaps some of that ammunition came from that weapon that was going off in the fire?
That I cannot say.
So it seems that you all are still looking for an additional weapon that would have been Sergeant Ketchum's backup weapon. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Are there any other weapons that you would know of that would be of interest in this investigation?
Not that I'm aware of.
You talked about, I believe this was when you first arrived on the scene after the fire was still being handled, put out while that was going on. You talked about going to interview a neighbor, correct?
Yes, sir.
That was one of the first things that you did when you arrived?
One of the first things.
Okay. And you said prior to that, you were given the suspect's name, specifically Mr. Kahn's name, prior to that interview, correct?
I was.
Okay. And you described that even at that time, he became the primary suspect, right?
That was the only name I had at that time. Yes, sir.
Okay. So simply, by him being the only name, is that why he was the primary suspect?
After I came back from interviewing the neighbors who described seeing the gray car that belonged to the boyfriend of Miss Puckett, I received copies of police reports where he had been at the house. Miss Puckett had called saying that he was not wanted there, and then he was actually caught in the driveway, and Robertson County deputy spoke to him.
Throughout the initial part of the investigation or the subsequent investigation, have you developed any other potential suspects in this matter?
No, sir.
The neighbor interview, if I could ask you to, this map that we have provides a location of the star. Your Honor, if I could possibly ask if you could identify identify, it's a little bit small, the area around her home, but which neighbors you interviewed that night? In relation to her home, which homes were they, the neighbors that you interviewed?
The home right behind her backyard. There's a home right behind her house, and that particular property has a detached garage.
Okay, and so I'm looking at this map. It appears there's a tree line that goes down sort of to the back of where that star is. It goes down both sides of the home, correct?
Yes, sir.
And so this would have been directly behind her home beyond, it looks like there's a subsequent tree line there that may run behind the house?
It's a fence line.
That's a fence line? Okay.
Yes, sir.
It would have been on the other side of that fence line, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. The driveway to that home, if you were at the street, is that going to be to the left or to the right of Ms. Puckett's residence?
As I'm standing in 41 North looking at her house,
Correct.
her driveway's on the right.
Okay, her driveway's on the right. The neighbor's driveway, does it come in from 41A?
It does not.
It looks like there may be some homes that are still on 41A that are just down, sort of going towards Dollar General, is that correct?
That's correct.
Did you interview anyone in those homes regarding this?
Directly next to her home. Deputies interviewed him that evening. The next day I spoke to him.
Okay. Did he provide any information that further indicated or further led you to believe that Mr. Khan was involved in this?
He did not.
Is it correct, I believe this was sort of a side thing, the neighbors identified the vehicle that you believe is Mr. Khan's vehicle, correct?
That's correct.
And they identified that as who they believed her, Ms. Puckett's boyfriend's vehicle?
That's what they said, yes.
Okay. Did they have any idea or give you any indication as to how long they believed a relationship may have been going on between Ms. Puckett and Mr. Khan?
They did not know.
In your investigation, have you investigated the nature, the extent of the relationship between Ms. Puckett and Mr. Khan?
It's still part of the investigation, ongoing, yes, sir.
Okay. Have you reviewed text messages or anything like that in relation to their relationship?
Not yet. No, sir.
Do you have any estimate as to perhaps when the relationship began?
Yes, sir.
Okay. About when was that?
Roughly November.
November?
That's, it would have been the fall of 2021.
During the course of your investigation, did you identify any items at this address that would have indicated the presence of a male perhaps living in the home?
Not that I recall, no, sir.
Okay. Nothing stood out to you as possibly, whether it be beard oils or shampoos or things like that, stood out to you as possibly being male related?
Not that I saw, no, sir.
Deputy Scarborough, you were the one who ultimately swore out the arrest warrants, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you chose to, I'm sure in consultation with others, to swear this out as a first-degree murder, correct?
Yes, sir.
Is there anything that you haven't discussed? We've discussed the videos, we've discussed knowledge of what happened a few days prior. Is there anything that you haven't discussed that would lead you to believe that this was the act of a premeditated murder?
Ask that again.
Your Honor, he's asking to make a legal conclusion.
Rephrase your question.
Do you have any knowledge as to what may have initiated contact? You believe that Mr. Khan had contact? You believe that Mr. Khan had contact with Ms. Puckett the night of the 22nd into the morning of the 23rd, correct?
I'm not sure when that contact occurred.
Okay. The car was there from the night of the 22nd, the Dollar General, from the night of the 22nd into the 23rd, correct?
That's correct.
It is your belief that in that time frame that Mr. Khan had contact with Ms. Puckett, correct?
Correct.
It is your belief that in that time frame Ms. Puckett was shot, correct?
Correct.
Do you have knowledge from text messages or from any other source as to what would have initiated that contact?
The police report from the 19th of January.
But nothing specific from that evening?
From the 22nd?
Yes.
No, sir.
So to your knowledge, there were no text messages, no phone calls between Mr. Khan and Ms. Puckett on that night?
I'm not aware of them yet. No, sir.
The fingerprints that were ultimately developed, and I'm not going to ask you specifics about that. I know that you're not a fingerprint expert, correct?
That's correct.
But those fingerprints that were developed, I believe you said that there were 2 fingerprints, correct?
That's my understanding. That's correct.
Do you know of any other fingerprints that have been developed connecting Mr. Khan to this address?
I'm not aware of any others. No, sir.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Redirect.
Briefly. Just want to make sure we're all clear on dates and times, or at least approximate. Do you have an exact timeline of all the changes of events at this time?
We do not. I do not have an exact timeline. No, sir.
It's still a work in progress, is that fair to say?
It is.
But what we do know, do we have footage of Mr. Khan at a Dollar General in town on the 22nd?
We do.
In that video, is he wearing what appears to be a Carhartt jacket?
He is.
Do you have video footage of him returning to that location, being the Dollar General, on the 23rd?
We do.
Roughly, is that roughly 16 hours elapsed in between?
Roughly. It's a little over, but roughly.
When he arrives back, is he wearing what appears to be the Carhartt jacket?
He is not.
Is evidence found consistent with that jacket on scene being Deputy Puckett's home?
It is.
Later on, do you have footage of him at Walmart?
We do.
Is he purchasing items consistent with the ignitable liquid bottles that were found in her bedroom?
He is.
So, from your investigation, does it appear that he came to her home at 2 separate occasions at least?
It appears that way.
And Deputy Puckett, are you familiar with her work schedule?
I am.
Was she a day or night shift officer?
Night shift.
Was her shift time from when to when, if you know?
5 p. to 5 a.m.
On the night that we're talking of the 22nd to the 23rd, was she working that evening?
She was.
So she would have got off at what time on the 23rd?
Around 5 a.m.
And then sometime after that's when we have Mr. Khan coming back to the Dollar General, after she's off of work.
Yes, sir.
Also, Mr. Thorne was asking you about cell phones and things of that nature. Those are currently being processed by your agency.
They are.
That's all I have.
Recross.
Very, very briefly, Your Honor. To follow with this, there is only one single weapon that you are still actively interested in relation to this case, correct? That you have not yet located?
As of right now, yes, sir.
Okay. Is it your belief that that weapon may have been the weapon that was used to shoot Ms. Puckett?
I cannot say that.
No further questions, Your Honor.
All right, sir, you may step down.
Officer Porter, Your Honor.
Raise your right hand. Swear affirm the testimony about to give us the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes, sir.
We'll have a seat there. You like to close the microphone, speak up good and loud, please.
Can you state your name for the court, please?
Kaylee Porter.
And Ms. Porter, are you a police officer?
I was in Smyrna.
And I believe you start next week with the Rutherford County Sheriff's Department, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And are you a post-certified patrol officer?
Yes, sir.
And from what date did you work with Smyrna?
From January 2019 until last Tuesday.
And last Tuesday you left because you got another job, is that fair to say?
Yes, sir.
First, let me ask you, what's the process at the Smyrna Police Department when you arrest somebody about fingerprinting them and documenting their fingerprint? How does that work?
Whenever we go through our fingerprint process, we bring the arrestee into booking. We type in their information to the computer. We do the booking photo, put on gloves, and do the fingerprinting process.
Is all the fingerprint done electronically?
Yes.
Is it though where you can print out a hard copy if you need one?
Yes.
And is that done with every arrestee there at the Smyrna Police Department?
Yes.
And I know some police departments have people assigned just to do that, and at some police departments, the officers do it. How is it done at Smyrna?
In Smyrna, the officer does it.
So from day one, are you trained to do that?
Yes.
And is that the normal course that you follow with every arrestee?
Yes.
And did you come in contact with Mr. Kahn, I believe, September 20th of 2019, Mr. James Jackson Kahn?
Yes, sir.
And what was that in relation to?
We got called for a domestic disturbance.
And did you end up placing Mr. Kahn under arrest?
Yes.
Police told me somebody else took the report.
Yes. No, I took the report. I was on scene with the victims, and he was on another scene, and my coworker took him into custody, and then I took out the charges
Coworker took him into custody,
and transported him to the station, and then I did the rest.
and then you met Mr. Kahn there at the station,
Yes, sir.
and walk me through what you did from there.
He got dropped off at the station. I took out my warrant, gave it to the magistrate. She signed it. I went into booking, did the booking process. He got taken to the magistrate to get his bond and whatnot, and he got taken to the Rutherford County
And
Jail.
in the booking process, did you get his social security number and date of birth?
Yes.
And did you enter his prints electronically?
Yes.
For today's purposes, did you print out a hard copy of those prints and that information?
Yes.
I hand that up to him.
So they show to the video.
Can you identify that?
Yes, these are the prints that I took.
And what is the date of birth that you enter on Mr. Kahn?
8/29 of 1994.
And what is the social security?
408-77-8217.
And is there a unique identifying number there in the left-hand corner?
Yes, sir.
Ask W entered as the next exhibit.
State 7, no objection.
No, Your Honor. Now, you work as a Smyrna Police Department patrol officer, you come in contact with people every day, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And making arrests every day or every other day and booking people in. How many people did you book in while working at Smyrna?
A lot.
So, can you recognize the Mr. Kahn that you arrested 2.5 years ago?
I recognize him, but I don't fully remember.
Is he here in the courtroom?
Yes.
Can you tell us where he's sitting and what he's wearing?
Right here in the red.
The record reflects you identified the defendant, James Conn.
No other questions?
Cross.
Yes, Your Honor. I swear Board, my name is Greg Thorne, I'm here representing Mr. Khan today. Just very quickly, you said that you sort of recognized Mr. Khan.
Yes, sir.
You said that a lot of people come in and out on a daily basis as this fingerprinting is happening, correct?
Yes, sir.
Do you recognize Mr. Khan as James Khan, the man you remember fingerprinting?
I recognize him. I don't remember the process. It was 3 years ago.
And that's what I was asking, and that's seeing a lot of people in this. Do you remember him and his name as James Khan, or do you just vaguely recognize his?
I just vaguely recognize.
Okay. The fingerprinting process, this takes place
The
on
Smyrna.
every arrest, correct?
Yes, sir.
If someone is arrested multiple times by Smyrna, brought in on different occasions, they would be fingerprinted every single time?
Yes.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Redirect.
No, you
Right, you missed it.
Yes, sir.
Call Heather Hammond, John.
Raise your right hand. Swear affirm testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
We'll have a seat there to close the microphone, speak a bit loud. All right, now.
State your name for court, please.
My name is Heather Hammond.
Ms. Hammond, where are you employed at?
I am currently employed at the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation.
What's your position there?
I am a certified latent print examiner within the latent print unit.
And to be a certified latent print examiner, do you have to have any special schooling or training?
Yes, sir.
Tell us a little bit about your schooling first.
As far as my schooling, I graduated with a Bachelor's of Science degree from Middle Tennessee State University with a concentration in forensic science.
And from there, what training did you have as far as fingerprints go?
As far as latent prints within the TBI, I completed a formal training program where I worked side by side with qualified examiners, processing evidence for the presence of latent prints, comparing submitted and developed prints to known impressions, writing reports based off of those results, along with reading multiple books and journal articles, giving presentations, and it culminated in a competency test in the form of a mock trial.
And upon that competency test, did you pass that test?
Yes, sir.
And were you approved at that time to be a latent print examiner?
Yes, sir.
And did you start working on actual cases at that time?
Yes, sir.
And how long have you been doing that?
I've been employed with the TBI for 6.5 years.
And during that time, how many examinations have you done for latent prints? Just approximately.
I've worked on maybe close to 500 cases.
And have you testified in court here in Tennessee before?
Yes, sir.
About how many times?
4 times.
Now, at this time, I'd ask that you be declared an expert in latent print examination.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
All right, find her to be an expert for purposes of a latent print exam.
Were you called in to work some latent prints early morning, late January 23rd, early morning 24th?
Yes, sir.
When you got to the lab, did you receive some evidence?
Yes, sir.
And who did you receive it from?
I received the evidence from James Scarborough.
In this case, because it was late at night, you received it directly from the TBI agent, is that correct?
This is correct.
And what did you receive from Agent Scarborough?
I received 2 I received all the evidence that was being submitted at the time, to include 6 packages.
And did that include two plastic bottles?
Yes, sir, it did.
And were they identifiable from each other, the bottles?
Yes, they were different.
And did you examine those for prints?
Yes, sir.
Tell me about that. First, was there a testimony of a white, lighter fluid type bottle? Did you examine that bottle?
Yes, sir, I did.
And did you find any prints on that bottle?
On that bottle, yes, sir.
What did you find?
I found 2 identifiable latent prints on that bottle.
Where were they located?
They were located on one of the skinnier sides of the bottle.
Were they together or separate, or
They were separate.
what do you mean by that?
If one of the prints was found on the bottle close to the top opening on the side, and the other one was found closer to the bottom.
One's kind of on the top and one's on the bottom. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, they were both on the side, one closer to the top, one closer to the bottom.
Did you find any prints on the other bottle, the green tiki torch, what would been described as a tiki torch fluid bottle? Did you find any prints on that bottle?
I found ridges, but no identifiable latent prints.
Not enough to make a comparison. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, that's correct.
Once you got those prints, do you have a system where you put it into the system to see if there's any matches?
For this case, because I had a subject's name along with a birth date, I checked the APHIS database to see if there was any prints on file, and because there were fingerprints on file, I went ahead and printed one of those fingerprint cards and then made the comparison straight from a fingerprint card to the developed prints that I had.
So in this case, you already had a subject or a suspect, and you just made the comparison of that suspect. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, the subject's name that was listed on the request for examination form is what I used for the
What
comparison.
suspect was that?
The subject's name is James Kahn.
Can I pass up a document?
Yes, have been shown to the defense.
She be also shown to the Senate.
Yes.
And all this, you're dealing with paper, but when you work in the lab, it's all electronic. Is that correct?
I actually printed the fingerprint card, and so it actually looks like this. So this is what I actually printed and did my comparisons off of.
And what you provided us, I believe, is a printout of that fingerprint card. Is that correct?
Yeah, this is the photocopy of it.
And on that fingerprint card that you pulled, is there unique identifying numbers on all fingerprint cards?
Yes, on fingerprint cards, there's going to be a couple different unique identifiers. One of them is going to be an incident number. Another one would be the state identification number.
And is that to keep all, basically, fingerprint cards separate from one another?
Yes, so the state identification number is going to be listed to a specific individual, and then anytime an individual has been fingerprinted for any reason, then those incidences, so it's the individual cards, will actually be associated with that state identification number.
Can you tell us if the print card you used, does it match the same numbers, and is it the 7?
Yeah, it appears to be a copy of it. The only thing that is missing is off of this copy is the state identification number.
But the incident number, is it the same?
Yes, the incident number is the same.
And if you look at the second page there, the incident number on that, on the second page,
On this back side,
either the back side or on the second page.
on the second page, there's an incident number listed and it's the same.
So that's the exact same fingerprint card, is that correct?
Yeah, the front side and the back side of this is. I'm not sure where this one came from. I'm assuming this is just from Smyrna PD. That it looks like it's just the bottom half of the fingerprint card.
Just part of their printout when they print out the when they print out a fingerprint.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Hand that back up. And the fingerprint card that you have that handed you, so that's the exact copy of fingerprint card taken by Smyrna PD. Is that correct?
This is the one that I pulled from APHIS. Yeah, it appears to be the same copy. Yeah, it has the incident number the same.
Consistent with the one from Smyrna PD, correct?
Yes, sir.
That's that being aired as the next exhibit.
States Exhibit 8.
And taking that fingerprint card in comparison to the found prints on that white lighter fluid bottle, what did you find?
Of those two prints, the first print I found to be identified to the number 3 or the right middle finger of James Jackson Kahn. And the second print I found to be identified to the number 4 finger or the right ring finger of James Jackson Kahn.
Both was a solid comparison, or solid match, is that correct?
Yeah, I did the comparisons and made an evaluation, which is an identification, and then another individual goes back and verifies my work and agreed with those comparisons.
So your comparison was confirmed by another person in the lab, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And who was that on this occasion?
It was John Dunn.
And did you prepare a report indicating these results?
Yes, sir.
Now hand up a document.
Yep. Been shown to.
Can you identify that as a document?
Yeah, this is my official latent print report.
And does that indicate what you just testified to as far as your results?
Yes, it does.
That's that being aired as the next exhibit.
States Exhibit 9.
No other questions?
Cross.
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Hammond is Hammond, correct?
Yes, Hammond.
Ms. Hammond, my name is Greg Thorne. I'm here representing Mr. Kahn today. Just going to ask a few follow-up questions here. You said that when you were provided, I believe, 6 packages in total, correct?
I believe so.
Your Honor, if you could check just to be sure that it's 6 packages.
Yeah, there are 6 items that are listed on the release form.
Okay. You said that when you were handed those, you were given a specific name as a suspect, correct?
On the request for examination form, there was a subject's name and a victim's name that's listed.
Okay. And the subject's name at that time was James Jackson Kahn, correct?
It was listed as James Kahn.
How common is it in your experience, it sounds like you've done this quite a bit, in your experience, how common is it that when you go to check prints, you're given a specific subject to check rather than a general check?
I would say that it's pretty common because an investigation has already taken place by the time that we get evidence that's brought in. And I would say that it's pretty common that we either have a subject or a victim's name.
And so then it's very regular, you would say it's very regular that when you go to analyze prints, you are checking it against a single potential source.
To start with, so if I have a subject or a victim, I will look into the database to see if those individuals have fingerprint cards on file for any various reason. If they do have prints on file, then I will take those prints and print them out if I have identifiable prints in the case and do a side-by-side comparison. If I make any identifications at that point, it'll go through a verification phase. If I don't make any identifications, at that point, then I can send it through the APHIS database to actually search the entire database.
But once you believe that you've made an identification, it is not run through the entire APHIS database, correct?
That is correct. It'll go through a verification process through another qualified examiner.
In your evaluation, of the items that you were given to analyze, were you able to locate any additional prints besides the two that you discussed here today?
Those were the only two that were of value for comparison.
What does that mean, of value for comparison?
It means that there was enough information within those two prints in order for me to make a comparison.
And so, while there may have been other, you described ridges at one point, or we'll say maybe partial prints, none of those would have had enough data points on them to be able to compare. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. No further questions, Your Honor.
Redirect.
No, you don't.
Am I dismissed for the day, sir?
Yes.
Thank you, Your Honor.
This side of the argument.
Your Honor, proof is that Deputy Ketchum got a call from Ms. Puckett in the early morning of the 23rd, the 19th. She knew that Deputy Puckett and Mr. Kahn had been dating. She knew that they had recently broken up. Deputy Puckett indicated, she testified to, that she was scared, that a car had been in her driveway, and she was following that car. She gave Deputy Ketchum a license plate, and it came back to James Jackson Kahn. She said that once the license plate was given, Deputy Puckett left, they checked it. So they knew he was there early morning, at least his car was there, early morning of the 19th. But the next day, Deputy Ketchum testified around 9 o'clock. She's called out by Deputy Puckett again. She's called, once again, she's scared. She says she's even more scared because Mr. Kahn is there. Deputy Ketchum then says that she met with Mr. Kahn, explained that he told him he shouldn't be there, and going to cross-examination, said, I gave him a trespass warning and told him not to come back. She identified him, described the car, so it was consistent with the same car as the morning before, that the plate was, and he left. She said, I went in and I gave my backup gun to Deputy Puckett because she didn't have another gun other than her service weapon. Then, what the proof shows us is that one, Deputy Puckett was working, according to Agent Scarborough, on the night, early morning, from January 22nd, 5 p.m. to 5 a.m. on the 23rd. Proof shows us Mr. Kahn got him the same. Agent Scarborough said, consistent with his car, pulls in at the Dollar General, goes in jacket and boots, buys some hot hands, then leaves. We know that car doesn't leave for 16 hours. We know Deputy Puckett's at work, so he's not going up there to meet her. He's not going up there to have dinner with her. What's he going up there for? He's consistent to stalk the house, watch the house. They've been together before. He knows her schedule. And the evidence shows us that he comes back 11:40, 9-ish the next day. The car never moves. You heard Agent Scarborough said, we reviewed the video, car never moves. He comes back, some things are different. Jacket's gone. Where's that jacket found? It's found in the house later after it's burned. Or jacket consistent with that jacket. Boots, gone. He's got red shoes on and a sweatshirt. No boots on that video. So he didn't bring the boots back at that time. Where's the boots found? In his car. So we know that he was up in and around Deputy Puckett's house for 16 hours. We know for 10 of those she's working. She gets off at 5 a.m., Soon, worked a 12-hour shift, goes home, probably goes to sleep. We know from the scene that her duty belt and her gun are found where the couch is. We know her habit is when she gets off from work, from working a long 12-hour shift, Deputy Ketchum testified, that's where her stuff goes. Consistent, her coming home, taking her gun belt off, going to sleep. He's somewhere up there around the house. We know that. Then, evidence shows us that Mr. Kahn's back in Smyrna at around 2:40, 2:41. And what's he buying? Buys two things. You can see we've got the pictures. Buys white lighter fluid, green tiki torch bottle. We know that at, I think around 5:15, I think, firefighter Vogel said they got the call. House is on fire. He goes in, finds Deputy Puckett laying on the floor. Agent Scarborough says, once I looked at the body, had multiple gunshots wound. Medical examiner says 8, consistent with her being shot, laying on the bedroom floor when the fire is started. We know by Agent Robertson that the fire is consistent with being started within the cellar. I think they use the word ignitable liquid, consistent with lighter fluid or tiki torch. And what do you know? We find both bottles of what Mr. Kahn purchased in the bedroom. You've got the pictures of white lighter fluid and the tiki torch bottle there in the bedroom. And what do you know? His prints are on that lighter fluid, consistent with being the lighter fluid that he just bought 2 hours before. Now this is still under investigation. Agent Scarborough said that several times. We've got several other things to examine, but it's clear that one, the house was caught on fire intentionally with some type of accelerant, consistent with being the lighter fluid and or the tiki torch fluid, consistent with being what he bought at 2:41 with a bottle that his prints are on once the house is investigated. Further, he's up in and around the house for 16 hours. A lot of the time, Deputy Puckett's at work. So at this point, we don't know if he killed her then or killed her later. But it's clear that he was there, he killed her. The Carhartt jacket, he was in that house at some point in time because of the Carhartt jacket, we know that. Then he leaves, goes to Smyrna, comes back, and burns the house down. I think that's sufficient proof for probable cause to show that there was motive. She broke up with him, he didn't like it, he had been there previously. He went up, he staked the house out, and when he had an opportunity, he went in and he shot her. There's a missing gun, which is consistent with being used in this homicide. We don't know, as Agent Scarborough says, he's honest, I don't know if it's that gun or not. But we do know that she had another gun and it's missing. All of which is consistent with Mr. Kahn committing premeditated murder, and I'd ask that you bound it over on that charge, and I'd ask to be heard on the bond.
Ms. Thorne?
Your Honor, briefly, the state lays out the belief that there's a strong argument here for the basis of these charges. I don't know that I fully agree with that. Even within their own theory, I have questions around the premeditation aspect of the first-degree murder charge based off of what's been presented. But at this time, I'm going to reserve any of those arguments for further dates and further arguments on the probable cause matter.
No. You're not making a motion as to bond. Are you wanting to be heard on bond?
I'm not, Your Honor.
Now, the state would ask, based on his prior history, to keep the bond at no bond. I've got certified copies, can walk through it if Your Honor would like.
Have you seen those certified copies?
I have, Your Honor. At this time, that's not contested. No motion is made by defense.
Your Honor, that is the, there's 2 assaults, I believe 2 attempts, and an ag criminal trespass, all convictions from Smyrna City Court, all within the fall of 2019, all consistent with a pattern of domestic assault, criminal contempt, and an ag criminal trespass. All if you look at the offense dates, there's a pattern of conduct there. There's also, Your Honor, I've got before that, a simple possession conviction out of the Rutherford County General Sessions Court.
At this point, the state's not able to make a determination as to whether there's going to be a death penalty case, is that correct?
No, Your Honor, we're referring to get all the evidence. There's DNA testing, there's analysis of the phone, and other testing that must be completed, other fingerprint testing before we can make a fair assessment of the matter.
All right, having heard the testimony and having considered the exhibits, I find the state has established proper cause on both counts. The defendant will continue to be held without bond. Is there anything else?
No, Your Honor.
No, Your Honor.
No, Your Honor.
Let me draw the exhibits. Stand in recess.
All rise. Court stand in recess.
Stand here.